You are now tuned in to the Dads Who Lift podcast with your host, Joel Staley. My guest today went from flat broke, even living out of the back of his Chevy Blazer, to now being a successful entrepreneur and real estate investor. He's here today to teach us how to start making passive income through real estate and become successful investors just like him. Creator of the blog, Cashflow Dad Life, Ryan Enk. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, Joel, thanks for having me on the show. I've never been on a show with lifting before, like, weightlifting. So to prepare for the show, instead of drinking whiskey, I had some creatine this morning. So.
Oh, I can see you look jacked.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I have heard you talk about mindset and how a lot of people know what the right thing to do is, and you've compared it to getting in shape. So I know you are an avid exerciser and you eat pretty clean. You seem to stay in good shape. So what's your secret?
Yeah, the mindset is key with real estate. A lot of people, and you can apply it to working out too, is, it's the problem for a lot of people isn't the skills, like working out. Knowing the form isn't that hard. It's the problem between the ears and the motivation and the willingness to take action. And I think that applies across the board. So
definitely. Can you give the listeners a rundown? I believe I've heard you refer to it as your 2 epic binges in life.
Yeah. I had some epic binges of failure and some epic binges of success. We'll start with the failure. It started off actually as, when I first got married as a husband and a provider. When my wife was 9 months pregnant, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, where I was living at the time. And the job that I had was the school was 6 feet underwater. I was a teacher. And I actually, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, living out of the Chevy Blazer for a while. I remember, laying next to the gas cans because we went to live in Baton Rouge with my wife's family, and all of them were sleeping in her brother's dormitory in Baton Rouge because he was in college at LSU. And it was just a trying time. And it was hard for me as a provider because not only was I looking for a place to live, but I was looking for a job to provide for my family. And I went on a series of interviews, got told no to almost everybody I interviewed with. I just found myself to be unhireable, I guess, or I wasn't good at interviewing. And I ended up trying to start my own business, got a friend involved with me, stole $4,000 from me, moved to Australia with it.
Good friend.
Yeah, just, great guy. But I finally did get a job, but I'm thankful for what it taught me about business, but it was just a horrible job. I don't know if any of you or your listeners have woken up with just like anxiety about what they had to do, but my job was selling copiers. And you basically have to go into this place, walk in uninvited, and ask them if they wanted to buy something that they pretty much spend all day hating. I don't know if you've seen that movie Office or Office Space, where they take the copier to the backfield and beat it with baseball bats.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically how people feel about their copier, and I got to walk in and ask them if they wanted one. So I knew I was at a low point when I was driving across the causeway of New Orleans, which was like the longest bridge. I think it's the longest bridge in the world. I think China maybe has a competing one. I'm not sure, but it's across Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans. And I just sold this copier to this Catholic monastery, and there's 34 people involved in the copier transaction. All of them can do something wrong but you're the only contact point for the customer. And so something was wrong with the copier, and I just got chewed out by this monk, and I'm driving across the bridge. I'm like, man, I'm really at a low point here. I just got chewed out by a monk. I hate my job. I'm working hard, but it seems like the harder I work, it doesn't necessarily mean I make more money. And I think that's, one of the things that your listeners might resonate with is that hard work doesn't always equal success. Hard work with the right formula equals success. If hard work was the formula itself, then coal miners would be millionaires, but they're not.
Right.
And so that's where I was. I was just working hard, but I was just like a hamster spinning my wheels. And so on top of that, just this constant anxiety, depression, not feeling like a good dad. At the time I had 3 kids. I got 5 kids now. Not feeling like a present husband because I'd come home and I'd worry about work all day. And so I thought to myself, prayed a little bit, and I was like, what would I do if money didn't matter? Say I had like $1 million in my bank account. What would I do? And I thought, well, money didn't matter. I would open up an indoor sports arena, like a soccer arena or a football arena or something like that. Or I would, I'd play music because I'm a musician. I said, or I would, I'd teach people like I did, before the hurricane hit, but I'd find a way to, if I didn't want to teach anymore because I couldn't make any money teaching, and I had all these, so or I teach people or mentor people. And so I had this thought, and I never had these thoughts before. I called my wife and I said, hey, as you know, I freaking hate my job. And I'm, I just got yelled at by this monk, I said, say we had $1 million in our bank account. What could you see me doing if money didn't matter? And she said, oh, I don't know. Maybe open up an indoor sports arena or like a soccer, football arena, playing music or teaching people. And that's when I was like, all right, this must be a sign, because we had never talked about anything with a sports arena before, my wife and I. So I was like, just remember it was your idea moving forward. So I just started pursuing it. And to make a long story short, I really used real estate as a vehicle to replace my working income with passive income. And 3 years later, I opened up the indoor sports arena. It was a multi-million-dollar sports arena. Then I opened up a second one a year later on the South Shore of New Orleans. And it was a dream come true, really. It was, it was a place where when I walked in the door, people were happy to see me. People wanted to know me. And it's a place where kids learn to play sports. We have, all these workout programs, weightlifting programs. We have adult soccer, adult flag football. People are getting engaged. People are having their Sweet 16 dances there, having their birthday parties there. So it was an awesome, fulfilling decision. And I really had to make a decision at that point. I'm either going to be scared and say, that's too far away. I can't do that. That's an unachievable dream. Or I could say, all right, you know what? I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to do it no matter what it takes. And I started with nothing but overdraft fees in my bank account. And, I just found creative ways to purchase real estate and create passive income that made that a reality.
And you have 5 boys, am I right?
That's right. I don't know how to make girls. I don't know.
Yeah, I lucked into, we have one little 6-month-old girl, but so you had 3 boys at the time. You're working a 9-to-5 selling copiers. Yeah. How did you find time to learn all about real estate investing in that small window of time that you have away from work before you have to sleep, where your wife is now juggling these 3 little boys? I can only, because I come downstairs to check in with clients or write a workout program, and 1 hour with the baby and my wife's ready to pull her hair out. So I can only imagine you learning how to invest in real estate must have taken a toll.
Yeah. I mean, after mentoring people for years, I discovered with almost everybody that they have more time than they think that they have. And I compare it to that old story. I was in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, where he talks about how a professor fills up this jar of big rocks and he asks the class, is that full? And they're like, yeah, it's full. And then he's like, put some pebbles in it. And he's like, well, now is it full? And they're like, okay, well, now it's full. And then he takes some sand and pours some sand in it. And he's like, well, is it full now? And they're like, okay, well, of course, now it's full. And then he takes some water and he pours some water in it. And he's like, is it full now? So the point is, like, a lot of people have time, maybe they're spending too much time on Netflix watching Game of Thrones or, whatever, or playing Angry Birds on their phone. And at that time, what I did is I was driving around. And so I used that drive time for my education. So I plug in my earphones, I listen to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks. And so I kind of educated myself a lot with just audiobooks and using my drive time, where normally I would, hop on the phone and talk to a friend or play music or something. I just instead decided to use that for, drive time. And then, dads are famous for this. I don't think everybody admits it, but I actually think it's pretty true. Most dads I talk to, sometimes when we just want time, we just go pretend like we're taking a deuce somewhere and we sit up
Definitely.
and play a game or surf the internet. So I just used that time, broke away 30 minutes or whatever and started playing with amortization calculators and figuring out, like different investment strategies. So I would say that there's, with most people when they sit down and when I sit down with them, a lot of times you can discover that there's some time there to do stuff.
So you said you started with nothing but some overdraft fees. How would you recommend somebody in a similar situation get started if they have very little to no money set aside for something like this?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of real estate strategies out there. I actually wrote a book to talk about that, and I can give your audience that book for free if they just cover the shipping cost. It's called the 7-Day Real Estate Survival Blueprint: How to Create 10,000 out of nothing in less than a month. And kind of the idea here was exactly what you asked. The idea is like, how do you go from nothing to creating wealth in real estate? Because that's the number one thing that I hear is an objection for people. They're like, well, I just don't have any money. So I was watching the show Alone. Have you ever heard the show? It's like a show on, I forget what channel it is. It's called Alone, where they like drop 10 people off on Vancouver Island.
No, I haven't.
It's like a survival show. So we had like this hurricane day that came through in New Orleans, and my kids were like, Dad, you got to watch the show. So I'm sitting down with them, and I was just like fascinated with it, because they basically take these 10 people, they drop them off on Vancouver Island in the wilderness without anything but a backpack. And they've got to, the person who survives the longest gets like this big cash prize. And so it just gave me like this idea of like, well, what would I do if I was dropped off in the middle of nowhere? I was in a brand new town. I had no network. I had no money. Maybe I had bills piling up. And, at the end of the month, I needed to come up with $10,000. What would I do in order to make sure that I had a $10,000 check at the end of the month? And so that's kind of the angle that I wrote the book, like a step-by-step guide of what I would do. To be very specific with your listeners, there's two strategies that I would use. One would be wholesaling, and the other would be sandwich lease options. And that just means that you find deals, you get them under contract, and you, instead of buying that house, you sell that contract to a cash buyer. It's a great way to do real estate. It's a great low risk way to start off. You're not holding any property. You don't have to have any money. You don't have to have any credit. All you need to do is finesse the skill of finding the deals, and then create a network of cash buyers. And I show everybody how to find those cash buyers in the book, how to find the deals in the book. I think we set up a special link, because this is like $30 on Amazon, and we set up a special link for your group, the Dads Who Lift. And it's cashflowdadlife.com/lift.
Oh, perfect. Now, did you have a mentor when you got started on this, or were you just straight anything you could get your hands on with the subject of real estate, you were reading it?
I wish that I had a mentor, because I just went out there like, cannon blast, just firing in all kinds of different directions. And I wish that I had a mentor to just sit me down and focus and say, all right, based on your situation, this is the strategy that you should work on. And I think the problem with a lot of people, it took me a lot longer than it should have. Even though I went, full speed ahead with everything that I could do, I think it took me a lot longer than I could have accomplished things, because I just didn't have a mentor to guide me.
And how long did it take you before you got to, quote unquote, fire your boss or leave your job?
Yeah. So it took me about 12 months to replace the income that I was making with the copier place. And then when I finally opened up the indoor arena, I decided, wow, I really love owning this thing, but I don't like being the general manager of this thing. And it took me at that point about 4 months to fire myself as my own boss and replace myself with a general manager.
That's awesome. So I've heard you talk about quick nickel and slow dime. A lot of people listening probably think to be a real estate investor, you have to buy a property, you have to fix it up, flip it, for a lack of better word, or I guess that's how what the term is. Is that what you're doing? Is you buying these properties, flipping them, and then reselling them?
Well, that's one strategy to start. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Real estate basically breaks down into two strategies. There's quick nickel and slow dime. Quick nickel is you're flipping, where you buy something at a discount. Maybe you did it at a foreclosure sale. Maybe it's a motivated seller. Maybe it's somebody going through divorce or bankruptcy or have a tax lien. So you can buy them at a discount with motivated sellers. And then you can turn around and sell it. And so then you can get some fast cash. You're talking about 10,000 on the low side on a flip and 100,000 on a high side on a flip. And it depends on where you are in the country too. And then on another quick nickel strategy is the wholesaling. What I just talked about is basically getting something under contract, never going in and fixing it, never going in and doing any renovation. You just take that contract and you bring it to a cash buyer. So say, Joel, you're a cash buyer, and I find a house that's worth $200,000, but I got it under contract for $110,000. Then I go to you and I say, hey, Joel, do you want this house for $130,000? And you say, yeah, absolutely. I'll pay $130,000 for a $200,000 house. Well, I just made a $20,000 spread, and you get the $70,000 spread, but you're the one that's going to go in and fix it up and flip it. So those are your quick nickel strategies. Eventually, what I think most people, if they're getting started in real estate, the best advice I could give is to really figure out why do you want to do real estate? Do you want to quit your job and have another job, or do you want passive income? Do you want to basically have financial freedom and time freedom to do whatever it is that you would do if money didn't matter? And that was my ultimate goal. So I did flip a couple things with wholesaling and even physically flipping them. But my goal was to develop a portfolio of not just single family, but apartments, so that I have passive income coming in. And so I don't have to worry every single month about where the money's coming from, or if the market's going to go down or the market's going to go up, and whether or not I can flip this for this price. I'm basically buying existing revenue streams, and I'm buying rental income. And that money comes every single month.
So this almost sounds too good to be true. The passive income, usually when someone talks about passive income, there's a catch, or there had to have been a time that, have you taken any losses on any properties, or have you had any hard lessons or lessons you had to learn the hard way because of this?
Oh, a ton of them. A ton of them. And that came down to not really having a mentor, but yeah, actually, one of the biggest mistakes I made ended up being one of the biggest blessings that I've had. And that's because I love the water. I love the river. I was always gravitating to looking at houses on the water. Well, and at the same time, I was watching HGTV. And at the time, I was doing like these 250,000 and below flips. And I was like, these people, they're buying these $800,000 houses or $500,000, and their spread is a lot bigger. They're making 60, 100, 120,000. So I was like, I'm going to go after a bigger deal. And so I went after this bigger deal. It was on the water. They reduced the price in one day from $650 to $350. And so I was like, wow, this is a great deal. So I didn't have any cash at the time, but I put them in a cash offer so that they would accept my offer. They accepted the offer. I found the cash later. And then the thing that hurt me on this is that it was a bigger flip, and I hadn't had that experience yet. It was a complete renovation. Had to tear down all the walls, had to tear out the drywall, had to move walls around, build a porch on the back, repaint the whole thing. Like the whole thing was a complete flip, a complete gut job, and I'd never done something like that. My contractor, who had done just lipstick on the pig type stuff, new granite counters, new floors, new paint, he was like, yeah, we can get this done in 60 days. Well, it took over a year and a half to get the whole thing done.
Wow.
So, massive holding cost on a really expensive house. And we ended up getting a contract on it, but he didn't pull a permit. The contractor didn't pull a permit to do some of the work. So that held us up, and it fell out of contract. But that's the house that I live in today. So it turned into a huge blessing because I always wanted to live on the water. I was like, you know what, this is actually the smartest thing for me to do. And I don't know if I'd be able to convince my wife to go and live on the water unless it was like, look, we either do this or we lose a ton of money. You know?
All right. That
So,
actually leads me into my next question. I've always heard that women have a tougher time going into debt, even when it's quote unquote good debt, because they're used to like, all right, well, we need money to buy the groceries. How did that conversation go between you and your wife? And especially when you were living paycheck to paycheck, it sounds like, how were you able to talk her into going into massive debt to acquire these properties?
yeah, so that's not an issue that I had with my wife. I'm thankful that she has always been really supportive of me, but there's been times where she's been like, hey, what are we doing? You know, where I kind of scaled things up quick and she got, you know, a little nervous about things. But really it just comes down to, I think a lot of people that have spouses, I think that you absolutely need your spouse to support you on this. It's kind of like, you know, the movie Rocky where, you know, when Adrian isn't supportive of him, he can't fight, you know, or he loses. You know, I very much believe that you need your wife to support you if you're going to do this. In order for her to support you, she really needs to learn and know some of the things that you're knowing. So if there's strategies that I started using and she got a little nervous, I was like, I know you hate this, but I need you to understand what I understand so that you're not, you know, questioning me the whole time, but you're actually supporting me because you understand it too. So I think it's important that, you know, if you have a spouse and if she has the tendency to doubt you, you know, or question you, which is completely normal, that she probably is involved in some of the education that you're receiving. And I think that gives them an extra level of comfort.
Definitely. I think you're 100% right on that. That's my problem a lot is I'll learn something and then I'm not the best at communicating it. So I'll start moving full steam ahead. And then my wife,
Right.
Amy's stuck back thinking, what the hell is going on? And I just assume she knows because I learned it.
Right.
That's something I'm working on. Can you break down your course a little bit further for us and tell us what all that includes and what someone can expect from getting out of that?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different courses. It's basically, we have a group training program, which is, you know, with me or some of the other people in the Cash Flow Dad Life mentors within the group. And we have a one-on-one mentorship. And really the first thing that we do is we look at the person's situation. So before getting started in real estate, you need to understand what kind of time do you have? What kind of money are you starting with? And a lot of people will start and they'll say, hey, you know, I only have $5,000 in the bank account. And then we'll look at their situation. What we do, we call it a capital discovery session. We'll look at their situation and we'll discover that, yeah, no, actually you have a little more. You know, you can do a self-directed IRA. You're in this sort of network and you can bring on this investor, or you've got equity in your house and you can use a home equity loan to put a down payment or owner finance a house. We actually have a system set up with 0% interest credit cards. That was actually one of the first foreclosures that I bought, was on a bunch of little different 0% interest business credit cards. You can't participate in the foreclosure sale unless you have full cash to buy it with. Well, I just used credit cards to buy that first house, and then I refinanced it through the bank and paid off the credit cards. So there's different things that we could do. And we look at your capital situation. We look at your time situation. We look at the network that you have. That's also important because, and we look at what your goals are. Do you want to be aggressive and get out there and work, or do you want another, you know, you just want passive income? So we have to kind of customize a real estate strategy around people's specific situation. The problem I see out there a lot is that mentors will pigeonhole you on just their one strategy in their program, like if it's wholesaling or it's lease options or it's apartments. We have done it all, and we teach people every single one of those methods. If you have $100,000 in the bank, then you don't need to be going out there and wholesaling. You need to be investing in these big multi-million-dollar apartments because you're going to achieve those results sooner. I'll give you an example. One of the guys in our program, his name's Gary Geedy. He's in Chicago. When he started looking at wholesaling, and he thought he only had like $5,000 in the bank. And 6 months later, after we went through the program, we're like, all right, look, you really, based on what you have, you need to go after apartments. And in 5 months, he was able to generate $8,000 a month in passive income with the apartments, and then $12,000 a month in 6 months with apartments. So we really just got to take people's situations and customize a strategy for them and put them into the right real estate strategy.
Now, is it you doing all this by yourself, or do you have partners helping you?
I've got partners. One of my main partners is Preston. He is just fantastic at underwriting deals, and he's an outstanding mentor. The mentorship program is actually growing exponentially. So we're taking a lot of our students that have had success, and if they're interested and they have a heart for coaching and helping people, then they are also becoming mentors as well.
Ryan, this has been super informative. I know as soon as I get off this call, I'm getting a copy of your book. You said you are going to provide a link, right? So I can post it with the video?
Yeah, so it's cashflowdadlife.com/lift. So
guys, if you're watching this video or listening and you don't get this free book, you have nobody to blame but yourself the next time your wife's bitching about not having enough money, because he's trying to help us for free. Give him a chance, listen to what he has to say. I've been following Ryan for a couple weeks now, and just from his free content on YouTube and on his website, I've learned a ton. So Ryan, really appreciate you being here. I hope everybody takes you up on this free book, and I hope to have you on the show again soon here.
Thanks, Joel. It was a pleasure coming on.
All right, brother. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, take it easy.